Guys, everything you know or you think you have known about international relations is about to change. Yes. Donald Trump has been making some really loud statements about certain regions in the world that is making me begin to think that that era of United States claiming dominance over the world has come to a close. Now, before I dive into what I have to say, this is Trump's idea. What I want to discuss now is based on Trump's statements, what I think it's Trump's idea. But I'm not saying that he's going to execute it, right? Because the neocons, these people with this neoconservative ideology, they are still very much in powerful positions within the United States. So I don't think they may want Donald Trump to execute this thought that he has. But I want to let you know because there's a high chance that the world is about to change and it's changing drastically. It's changing drastically. And everything that I've been saying on this show since I started in June 2024, everything I've been saying on this show about the multipolar world is really, really a big deal. So, what are the Donald Trump statements that I'm talking about? You must have heard that Trump said he's going to. Initially, it started like he was trolling. When he started saying this thing, I just looked at it like, oh, this is Trump's mega troll. But he's saying it more and more and more. And I'm like, there's a possibility that this is more than just trolling. So, what am I driving at? Trump started by saying that Canada should be the 51st state of United States and Justin Trudeau is going to be the governor. That was when he mentioned tariffs against Canada and Justin Trudeau went to speak with him about the tariffs. That was when he started saying this thing. Beyond that, he has also said that he wants to take back the Panama Canal because it was stupid for United States to give it up. Now, I know that I have heard him say this thing when when he left office. There was a podcast or an interview I was listening to, and he mentioned this that that's one of the most expensive infrastructure developments United States ever took on, and US just gave it up like that. So he that was when I first heard him say this thing after he left office, some years after he left office. So that's the second thing he said. He said the United States is going to take back the Panama Canal because China is doing things in the canal. So that's two. The third thing he said is they are going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. That is Donald Trump also laying claims on Mexico. Well, like I said, I thought it was trolling. So the first thing that he said is that United States is going to take over Greenland because Greenland, the people of the island will be so happy to have Donald Trump or to be so happy to become Americans. His son even went there. Donald Trump Jr. went to Greenland and he did some videos in the country. In fact, that the statement about Greenland has rattled Europe. But why Greenland is very interesting is because even in his first term, he made mention of Greenland. Back then, he said, "Oh, Greenland is not for sale." Am I driving at? If you look at the map of the world, you realize that these areas he's discussing Greenland, the Panama Canal, Mexico, Canada these are all in the Americas. And if you remember, after the fall of Assad, he made a statement or made a tweet slash a truth post that United States should not be involved in anything going on in Syria. But I'm sure he should know that whatever is going on in Syria is the United States that that you can, although like I said before in the previous episode when I spoke about the fall of Assad, Erdogan of Turkey is the kingpin of that. But United States has as much responsibility in the fall of Assad as Erdogan of Turkey. So he made that statement, right? And if you listen to what he says about Russia and Ukraine war, he keeps saying, "Oh, this thing should never have happened." So what am I saying? It looks to me that this whole talk about Greenland, the Panama Canal, Mexico, that's the Gulf of Mexico, Canada being the 31st state of United States, all of this talk is more than true. Donald Trump wants to assert United States stronghold in the Americas. So if this is anything to go by, I'm thinking that we are entering the era of spheres of influence in geopolitics. Now since United States has enjoyed unipolar, that's United States has enjoyed complete hegemony over the world in like a couple of decades now. The Dominant ideology in the world has been United States hegemony. That is the neocon ideology, which is the ideology I really have a problem with because it is United States is the boss of the world. So we in the United States, we can live there and come to Africa and tell the Africans to behave a certain way, and we expect them to comply. If they don't comply, we can bomb them to oblivion. We saw it with Libya, we saw it with Somalia, and different parts of the world, right? So that's the neocon ideology that acts like the world is United States for the making. Let's change the world the way we want to change the world and blah blah blah. But Donald Trump's statement now is beginning to look to me like all he wants to do is to completely assert US's dominance in the Americas. And I heard someone use the word sphere of influence, and he said that this is looking like we are going back to the 19th century, right? The 19th century where there were spheres of influence here and there. Now, if we are looking, like I mentioned before, I've mentioned several times, we're in a multipolar world. So even that era of that neocon ideology is not relevant in today's world. The neocon ideology that says United States has to be the supremacy in the entire world doesn't hold water. In fact, that is the reason why we are seeing this Russia-Ukraine war. The Russia-Ukraine war is not a case. I've told you this before. It's not a case of Russia trying to bully its neighbor Ukraine. No, it's a case of the United States using Ukraine, trying to use Ukraine to weaken Russia, to defeat Russia, whom United States considers a threat to United States hegemony. It's the same thing we are seeing in Asia with China, Taiwan, Philippines, Japan. That's what it is. It is not that China is bad, but no, the United States wants to use these smaller countries like Taiwan and Philippines and Japan, yeah, to create a grouping to defeat China and weaken China and completely take China out of the game of world power. That's what it is. But as we are seeing right now in Ukraine, this plan has failed. Russia has won that war in Ukraine. Even I saw a report on the Hill some weeks ago, and in this report on the Hill, the writer mentioned that I can't remember the person who wrote it, but the writer mentioned that back in April of 2024, there was a meeting between some representatives of this Biden administration and Ukraine intelligence agencies, intelligence unit, and all of that. There was a meeting that clearly said in the meeting what they discussed that Ukraine has failed. So they were thinking of using other non-conventional methods to continue prolonging the war. So back then, as at April of 2024, the Biden administration knew that Ukraine had lost. As at April 2024, yet in that period of April 2024, United States approved, is it 61 billion dollar military package for Ukraine, or also several countries, but Ukraine had a large chunk of that money. Do you get what I'm saying? So Ukraine has lost. All we are seeing now is just like a tidying up of the whole thing. Right. So if this is anything to go by, I want us to now look at if this, I'm not saying Trump is going to succeed, right? Because even the neocons are really going to fight to continue this their United States supremacy in the whole world. But if this is anything to go by, if you're going to look at how Trump is, based on Trump's rhetoric, if you're looking at how things may unfold, it's going to be United States is going to handle the United States sphere of influence is going to be Trump is going to focus on the Americas. Why does Trump want Greenland? Resources. Resources. Greenland is rich in resources, many rare earth minerals the for electric cars, for this green evolution that the world is undertaking. Many of that is in Greenland. One of the reasons why United States has issues with what China is doing in Africa is because many African nations that produce these rare earth minerals, China is closely working with them. Many of these mines, some of these mines that are producing these rare earth minerals are managed by Chinese companies. Even not just in Africa, even in Australia. Even in Australia, some of these mines that produce these rare earth minerals for electric revolution are controlled by Chinese companies. So Trump looking to get into Greenland, I think it's a card that Trump is playing to also bring United States into this rare earth minerals game. Other than that, They are also going to because they're also going to create this a lane, a shipping lane, because now that we and it's also the same thing with the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a shipping lane. So instead of going through this, what's the name of this canal that runs through Egypt, cuts across Egypt, Middle East? Anyway, that I'll find the name and put it on the screen. Instead of using that or going across Africa, which is around the southern part of Africa, right? They want to create another shipping lane in the Arctic. Russia is powerful in the Arctic. In fact, Russia has several military bases in the Arctic. Russia has ice breaking ships in the Arctic because Russia is there. So, what Donald Trump is doing, to me, Donald Trump is carving out US sphere of influence to be in the Americas. That's what it looks like to me. Now, I've said in this multipolar world, we have seen that Russia is a world power. We have seen China is a world power. We have seen United States is a world power. Another place to look at is India. India is a world power. Maybe you may have some arguments that, oh, no, not here, not here, not here. But you cannot deny that India is a powerful force. After India, another country that I heard someone mention, and the person said only if that country should get its politics together, that country is already a world power. It's as good as a world power. It's Brazil. And if you look at Trump's talk about this America, it doesn't go beyond Panama. Do you understand? So it seems like North America and just Panama. So this is Donald Trump is saying this is going to be US's sphere of influence. If the United States has a sphere of influence in the Americas, we can easily say that China's sphere of influence is Asia. India's sphere of influence is going to be the Indian subcontinent, which is India, which will include Pakistan, which will include Bangladesh, which will include Sri Lanka. Right? We can say that is India's sphere of influence. We can say Russia's sphere of influence is Europe, which is why I think the biggest losers, if Donald Trump executes this thing he's talking about, the biggest losers are going to be the Europeans. Because for something so stupid, they went to antagonize Russia. If United States, based on what Trump is saying, if United States is going to focus on the Americas, where do you leave those satellite states in Europe? That is the reason why you've been seeing them. They are saying they want to discuss with Trump. They want to do this with Trump. They are running all around Trump because they want to keep Trump in Europe. It's not just because of Ukraine now. They're using Ukraine as the cover, but it's because if Trump moves and focuses on the Americas, his attention is not going to be on Europe. It's going to now be clear that Europe, when it comes to geopolitics, Europe is irrelevant because Europe did not pursue a policy of sovereignty. Rather, they were happy to be lapdogs of the United States. So look at it now. Europe is nothing. Europe, the leaders of Europe have successfully made Europe nothing. Now let's go back to sphere of influence. Now, if you look at the Middle East, we are going to say who is going to be the country that may claim the Middle East as a sphere of influence. Don't forget Turkey. I mentioned at the beginning of this segment that one of the architects of the fall of Assad is going to be Erdogan of Turkey. Even when I mentioned, I think there was a time I mentioned on this show, this is last week or 2 weeks ago, that there was a conversation that Erdogan had with his, was it like party leaders, but it was in his country anyway, and he was bringing up the Ottoman Empire, and he said if the Ottomans hadn't lost World War One, if the World War had gone in another way, maybe a country like Syria will still be under the influence of Turkey. If Donald Trump has his way, sphere of influence in the Middle East, we have Turkey. Let's not look away and act like Israel is not there. Israel is there. Iran is there. Saudi Arabia is there. That's why I'm thinking that the Middle East is going to be it's going to be it's going to be a serious fight because they have countries that are really pulling themselves to be big dogs. Well, the only one that because and then the interesting thing about that Middle East is that when it comes to military is clearly Turkey. When it comes to economy, I think right now Turkey is having economic issues. So when it comes to economy, maybe we'll be looking at say Saudi Arabia, right? When it comes to political clout, I can give that political clout also to Turkey because maybe that's one of the reasons that Erdogan is trying to bring peace between Ethiopia and Somalia. He's trying to be like mediator. Remember in 2022 where they had those peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? What did they have it? Ankara. It's okay. So we can give military and political clout to Turkey. So economy right now is the one that if maybe if they get their things together, maybe Turkey. But I would say the overwhelming force for now is going to be going to Turkey. But we still have contenders with Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. So if you look at the world now, the only place that doesn't seem to have a region like a, an overwhelming force that can say, all right, this is my sphere of influence is Africa. It's Africa. There's no single African country that is over because if you say military, right? Military we can give it to Egypt. If we say political clout, we've been seeing several movements that what South Africa has led, though I'll give credit to Ramaphosa for that on international stage because Ramaphosa of South Africa led the African team that carried a peace initiative to Ukraine and Russia. And when they did that, it was a very disrespectful thing that happened to them, these African delegates in Poland. Right? I don't want to go into that discussion now. Right? So we're going to say South Africa. That then if we now say economy, which is where many African countries are really on their knees, honestly. Because for me, I would say you should have at least $1 trillion economy. At least $1 trillion economy for you to want to say, all right, we're an economic behemoth. But there's no the highest that any African country has hit in economy, to the best of my knowledge, was 550 billion, and that was Nigeria. So we have a very long way to go. Which is where now this is where I'm having my worry. Because if the world right now is carving up spheres of influence, Donald Trump saying, oh, the Americas is ours, do not come here. Brazil may now say, okay, several Southern Africa, Latin American countries, Brazil can say, this is where we are going to stay. China can say Asia. India can say the Indian subcontinent is ours, right? Russia will say Europe is ours, don't come here. Do you get me? Turkey will say the Middle East is ours, don't come here. Wait, that means Africa is the only one open for carving up as any world power deems fit. This is where I have my worry. Because if the 19th century is anything to go by, to remember, if that 19, because this is, like I mentioned, someone said, whatever, if what Trump is planning now should fully arrange itself, this we are going back to geopolitics of the 19th century. And if the 19th century geopolitics is anything to go by, Africa was carved up. Africa, the European part, because then they were the overwhelming force, the European powers had a field day with Africa. They had a field day with Africa. Remember when they carved off Africa in Berlin, the Berlin Conference, it was the 19th century. It was the 19th century. So its space of influence is the new world we are entering into from January 20th. I'm not saying Trump is going to succeed. Like I said, the neocon ideology says the world is ours, the entire world, not just these regions Trump is mentioning. The neocon ideology says the entire world is ours. So they are going to fight Trump, and this is regional hegemony game he's trying to play. So I'm not saying Trump is going to succeed, but I want us to keep at the back of our mind as we're entering the next. In fact, from January 20th, from January 20th, the game is on, and that sphere of influence geopolitics is an area where so United States will not just get into Europe without consulting the Russians. The United States will not just get into Asia without consulting the Americans. The United States will not just do anything they want to do in the Indian subcontinent without speaking with India. The United States is not going to do anything it wants to do in most parts of Latin America without talking to Brazil. The United States is not going to do anything it wants to do in, say, the Middle East without speaking to the, I don't know whether it's going to be Turkey that will win that, or Israel or Iran or Saudi Arabia, I don't know. But when it comes to Africa, everything is open. If now this is hypothetically, I'm not saying this is going to happen, right? This is just me painting a picture. If US says, all right, if Trump says, all right, I want us to focus on these regions of the Americas to completely assert America's power in this area, as they even try to take over and continue and also play in the Arctic, right? In the Arctic region. If the if Trump is saying that, and this is hypothetically, I'm not saying it's going to happen, and Donald Trump says every American military base in Africa, I'm closing it. And Donald Trump closes all American military. This is I'm not saying this is happening. I'm just painting a picture. And Donald Trump closes all America's military bases in Africa. I need you to understand that Africa is open for carving again. They can carve us up again. They can carve us up. If we are playing the 19th century geopolitics, remember what happened in 1884. Remember what happened. They carved us up at the Berlin Conference. At the Berlin Conference, they carved us up. So we're entering a new world where this is a possibility again. Should we be so stupid the second time not to do something about it? I'm announcing it now. I'm probably you've not heard anybody say this thing. Because I've not heard anybody say it, that Africa is going to be up for the carving again. I'm the first person that I know is saying this thing. I'm the first person. So if this thing happens and the whole world says, all the superpowers in the world says we are going to focus on our region, Africa is exposed. Africa is exposed. Africa is exposed. So now more than ever, I am hoping that people who are listening. Like this is an existential moment for Africa. Our existence depends on it. I told you the last episode of this show that when you got the charm of an election of independence that you got, because we didn't really gain independence, but when we got that charm that was called independence, they did not forgive us. They did not. They did not, because now you cannot just enter Africa because of so-called international law. You cannot just enter Africa to do as you please. There are procedures. Although NATO and the rest, they did as they pleased. But the way, say, the French could just come in and do anything, or the British could just come in and do anything, it doesn't work like that. This is a new world that is taking form, that is taking form in front of us. Hmm. So what can we do? We as Africans, what can we do? If you're listening to me now and you have access to anybody in any any political office in any African nation, particularly on the federal level, if you have access, let them know that the world is changing. So that you in your country, right, you can begin to think, how can we position ourselves? Right. But now, for we as the people, what can we do? Number one, every African needs to understand what is going on. By God's grace, before the end of this month, our African media movement, registration site, everything should be ready. We are going to use media. We are going to use media. And we are going to parrot, we are going to speak, we are going to scream Africa's interest in a new world. So that every African will understand that the world is changing. We are going back to 19th century geopolitics. That is the first thing. The good thing about now compared to the 19th century when they were able to so easily carve us up is number one, we have information. Number two, we have social media. We can push this thing out. So there should be no excuse for any African, especially you that is listening to me, whether you're an African in Africa or you're an African in diaspora. There should be no reason why you are not speaking what is going on in the world. That is number one. Number two, that is the first thing we are going to work on. The second thing that we Africans need to now do, we have to remove puppets from office. We have to remove puppets from office. Because if Donald Trump is doing this thing that he's planning he wants to do, and every major and the world powers are going to focus on their regions, We cannot afford to have puppets in power. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's not just sell us out. You say, oh, sold that. No, it's not just selling us out. They will destroy, once and for all, they will destroy this continent or they will destroy your respective country. So I don't want to call names now because by now you people should know the people that I'm looking at, but I don't want to call names. But you in your country, there are certain leaders these leaders have not been working for the interest of your country. It is time to start taking them out. Begin to look for position, not just look for opposition parties, right? Opposition leaders. But sometimes both the opposition and the governing party are the same thing. If I'm going to give you an example, let me give you an example with the United Kingdom. Both the conservatives and Labour, they are the same thing. They have the same foreign policy. They are the same thing. If you look at the United States, both the Republicans and the Democrats, they are the same thing. The only difference is the MAGA sect. Is that MAGA because MAGA has a different ideology. It's the MAGA sect. Quite right, there's several things, similarities they have here and there, right? Well, that is that. So if the same thing we have in Africa, many African countries now, both the opposition and the governing party, they are the same thing. So now should be at the point where we should begin to groom new leaders. We have 4 years. We have 4 years. Begin to groom new leaders. Look for people who are saying something entirely different. Look for people that are outside of that engagement, or maybe even then, I want to say outside of the system, but sometimes maybe in the system. But for many years, you've listened to them and they've been saying different things compared to the widely accepted norm of being puppets. Begin to look for those and look for those ones. But if in your country, peradventure in your country, you don't see anyone, why don't you become the opposition? What stops you from going into politics? Nothing. Nothing. To the best of my knowledge, in every African country, anybody can throw their hat into the ring and say, all right, I'm getting into the game of politics. Now it's time for you to become opposition. Now it's time because we cannot allow these puppets to keep governing us. If we miss it this time, I don't know if we can redeem the situation in Africa. If we miss it now, at this time when the whole thing has not fully formed, everybody is breaking into segments. Everybody is claiming sphere of influence. If we miss it now and we allow this new world to really take shape and we are still on the back foot, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous for Africa. So these are the two things I want us to keep in mind going forward. These are the two things I want us to keep in mind going forward. Number one, we're going to use media to let every African know what is going on. We're going to use media to speak up for Africa. Because now, let me give you an instance, right? Like I mentioned, to me, the three things that you used to know is superpower is military. You have to have overwhelming military force. Military. Apart from no African country, like I mentioned before, I think the strongest military on the continent is Egypt, and even the military of Egypt cannot really stand compared to militaries of some other countries. I don't want to mention names. So even with that military, I put slash technology because many of the technology we use today they came out from military. AI came out from military. The internet came out from military. 4G, 5G came out from military. Do you understand? So I would say military slash technology. We need to have overwhelming force. That is number one. Number two, I would say political clout. Which country in Africa will speak and the world will listen? We don't have any. Which country in Africa has taken up strong mediative roles? Apart from that, what do you call it? That African delegation that Ramaphosa of South Africa led to bring peace in Russia and Ukraine. I really haven't seen. Even sometimes, even within region, it seems that we cannot even fix regional issues. Sudan has been burning since 2023. No African country has been able to fix it. The DRC has been burning for how long? No, nothing has been done. The DRC, we've been having Rwanda DRC here and there, fight, but nothing has been done. Okay, look at Mozambique that started burning in October of 2024. Nothing till now. You have been watching Mozambique burn. Do you understand? So no country in Africa has political clout to boast of that When you speak on a global level, they listen. No country in Africa. Economy, no country in Africa. Like I said, for me, it is at least $1 trillion economy. None. The highest any African lead country has hit, to the best of my knowledge, is Nigeria, and it was 550 billion. That's not enough. That is not enough. So we are going to use media to form these policies for us. What do I mean by that? If, for example, we are seeing an African country, let me use Nigeria. Oh, Tinubu is signing a very disastrous deal with the IMF. We will raise alarm and we have to make so much noise because it is that deal with the IMF that brought Nigeria into where Nigeria is now. That Tinubu took it from a measly and a very shameful 400 and something billion. Right now, as we speak, Nigeria is 200 and something billion. That's very terrible. In the from May 2023 to this is January 2024, Tinubu has taken millions of Nigerians into poverty. So if you see an African leader, we can say the same thing for Ruto in Kenya. So if you see an African leader going to sign for something so disastrous, for something so disastrous as this, we will use media to raise alarm. We will make noise with it. So much noise that they cannot ignore our voices. Because now we are going to use media to put pressure. If we are going to, if we want to protect ourselves, oh my God, if we want to protect Africa in this 19th century style of geopolitics, we need to be alert because people who want to carve us up, we are going to be coming in different methods, different ways, and we have to use media to raise alarm. If we are seeing an African country burning for so long in Sudan, we have to use our media to begin to put pressure on our respective governments to bring a solution to it. So this is what I think that we can do. Right now, I'm saying this for people who are not in political power. Because if you're in political power, of course, the conversation is going to be different. But for like myself and some of you who are not in political power, and you're thinking, what can I do? This is what we can do. We can create media. Everybody, African media movement. By the ending of this month, I'm going to make the announcement where we can sign up and join and everything. African media movements. We will use media to do it. Number two, we'll have to start orchestrating our plan to get puppets out of power and create a kind of structure within politics in Africa that no puppet can ever come into office again. No puppet can ever come into office again. If not, we are going to be destroyed. Or we are going to be destroyed. So let me know what you think about Donald Trump's moves, making claims. It seems to me like he's taking America's claims within his region. And let me know also what you think about what I suspect that it is. We are going back to 19th century geopolitics, where it's sphere of influence. Every country, every superpower, every overwhelming superpower is taking its claim. Russia is. I really feel sorry for those in Europe because their leaders were so stupid. Permit my language. The leaders were so misadvised and misinformed to go against their own interests when they went to antagonize the Russians. Well, if America decides to leave Europe, Europe is going to be standing there empty with a very angry Russia in its back door. There was no need. All Germany, France, United Kingdom, all of them, all the antagonists they gave to the Russians, there was no need. It didn't make sense. But here we are. So let me know. Share your thoughts with me in the comment section below. And also Africa's place in the multipolar world. Let me know your comments in the let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the share button so that every African and the whole world should know that we're entering a different kind of geopolitics of international relations, and Africa needs to claim its own spot in this world. And as always, if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much.